The Khazari had always considered humans fragile. Arya Voss had grown accustomed to the sideways glances, the careful way the 8-foot-tall warriors would step around her as if she were made of glass. Their fur-covered bodies rippled with muscle designed for their home world's crushing 2.3 g gravity, and their amber eyes held centuries of predatory instinct. To them, she was a curiosity, a diplomat from a species that had somehow stumbled into the stars despite their laughable physical limitations. The human cannot possibly manage the ascent, Elder Throck rumbled, his mane bristling with barely concealed disdain. The right of the ridge requires strength, honor, not softness. Arya stood in the great hall of the mountain fortress, surrounded by a dozen Khazari elders. Outside, the twin sons of Khazara Prime beat down on redstone cliffs that stretched toward a sky the color of copper. Somewhere up on those cliffs, in the sacred breeding caves, 3 cubs had been trapped by a rock slide. Their mothers howled in anguish below, claws scraping uselessly at stone. "Your warriors are too large," Arya said calmly, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "The passage is narrow. I've seen the scans. An adult Khazari can't fit through the gap." "Then the cubs are lost," Throck said flatly. "It is the way of things." "No." Arya's voice cut through the hall like a blade. "It doesn't have to be." The elders exchanged glances. One of them, a scarred female named Kessa, tilted her head. "You would attempt this? You, who cannot even lift a training stone." Arya had tried, once. The training stone weighed nearly 300 pounds in Earth gravity, probably close to 700 here. She'd barely budged it. The younger Khazari warriors had found it amusing. "I don't need to lift stones," Arya said. "I need to reach those cubs." Silence fell. Then Throck's laugh boomed through the hall, harsh and mocking. "Go then, Softskin. Let us see how your weakness serves you on the ridge." The climb began at dawn. Arya stood at the base of the cliff face, her human-made climbing gear strapped tight. The Khazari watched from below, a sea of fur and fangs, waiting for her inevitable failure. She could hear them placing bets. The rock was hot beneath her fingers, already warming in the early light. Her muscles screamed as she pulled herself up, finding handholds where Khazari claws would have simply shattered stone. Meter by meter, she ascended. The gravity pressed down on her like a physical weight, each breath a labor, each movement a small victory against physics itself. 2 hours in, her arms trembled. For hours in, blood from her torn fingertips painted the rock. 6 hours in, she reached the narrow crevice that led to the breeding caves. The gap was barely 18 inches wide. Impossible for an adult Khazari, but tight even for her. Arya squeezed through, ignoring the rocks scraping her shoulders, her hips. On the other side, the cave opened into a small chamber lit by bioluminescent fungi. 3 sets of eyes gleamed in the dim light. The cubs were young, barely weaned, their fur still soft and kitten-like. But even at this age, each one weighed at least 60 pounds in Earth gravity, probably 140 here. They mewed pitifully, huddled together against the rockfall that had sealed the main entrance. "Hey there," Arya whispered, approaching slowly. "I'm Arya. I'm here to help." The largest cub, a male with distinctive black ear tips, hissed weakly. His leg was bent at an unnatural angle. The other 2 pressed close to him protectively. "Easy, little one," Arya murmured. She knelt, her legs shaking from the climb. "Easy." She examined the injured cub's leg. Broken, but not shattered. She could splint it. But how to get them all down? The answer came to her as she looked at her climbing harness. Crazy. Impossible. Suicidal, probably. But humans had always been good at impossible things. 20 minutes later, Arya stood at the cave entrance with 3 Khazari cubs strapped to her body. The injured one, Moreau, she'd learned from the identification band around his neck, was secured across her chest in a makeshift sling. The other 2 were harnessed to her back, their combined weight pressing down on her shoulders like an anvil, over 400 pounds. In this gravity, probably closer to 900. Her legs nearly buckled as she took the first step. "Come on, Voss," she muttered through gritted teeth. "You didn't come this far to fail now." The climb down was a nightmare painted in shades of agony. Every muscle fiber screamed, her vision blurred with sweat and tears. The cubs whimpered, and somehow that gave her strength, the knowledge that 3 small lives depended on her not letting go. She descended inch by agonizing inch. Her fingers were numb, her arms beyond exhausted, moving on pure stubborn will. Below, she could hear the crowd of Kazari going silent as they realized what she was attempting. Halfway down, her left hand slipped. For one heart-stopping moment, she swung free, suspended by her right hand and the climbing anchor at her waist. Moreau squeaked against her chest. The other cubs dug their tiny claws into her back. Not today, Arya snarled, and found a new handhold. The final 10 meters took an eternity. When her feet finally touched solid ground, her legs gave out completely. She collapsed to her knees, the cubs still strapped to her body, and gasped for breath that wouldn't come. Kazari hands, gentle, reverent, carefully removed the cubs. Mothers rushed forward with cries of joy. Arya felt someone lifting her, heard voices speaking in awed tones. Through the haze of exhaustion, she saw Elder Throck staring at her. His amber eyes were wide with something that looked like shock. How, he breathed. The weight, the climb. How? Arya managed a weak smile through split lips. We're not strong like you, she panted. But we're stubborn. And when someone needs help, we don't give up. Kessa, the scarred elder, knelt beside her. We thought you were weak, she said softly. We were fools. Not weak. Arya corrected, wincing as the medical team began working on her shredded hands. Just different. Humans adapt. We endure. We find ways. Later, as she lay in the medical bay with Moreau curled up purring against her side, the cub had refused to leave her. Arya heard the Kazari speaking in hushed, wondering tones. They were calling her Ridgewalker, Cub-bearer, the one who carries mountains. The humans were still considered fragile by galactic standards. They still couldn't match the raw strength of species evolved under higher gravity. But after that day, no one who heard the story of Arya Voss would ever call them weak again, because humanity had something that couldn't be measured in kilograms or gravity wells. They had the kind of strength that came from choosing to climb when it would be easier to give up. The kind that lifted impossible weights because someone small needed saving. The kind that made them reach for the stars in the first place, despite every reason to stay in the trees. And in the end, perhaps that was the strongest thing of all.